Alright, hello and welcome back to the unofficially first episode of the main character complex, or officially the second episode of the main character complex. I did record this episode ages ago, but then stupid me, didn't save it properly, and so it all got corrupted, and so I lost like 40 minutes of me talking. And knowing me, I was not going to re-record that, because when I lose something, I just don't want to do it again. Like, that's just, pure spite. Anyways, finally sat down, the anger's gone, time to re-record this. So the reason that this OC's backstory is a podcast and not in written format like every one of my other OCs on TOYHOUSE is because this one is really long, and it's just simply easier to record it and for you guys to listen. So feel free to put it on 2x speed. This entire thing won't have any images as it is a podcast, except at the very end where you need some visual aid as I try to explain a very complex timeline. Nonetheless, let's get on. So this OC that we're talking about today is Corran Knight, a Marvel OC that I initially made as a coping mechanism, like a fix-it-fic, Mary Sue. You can kind of see the elements of that in here to fix the trauma that Infinity War imposed upon us. But after a while of having a mental breakdown, we ended up making Corran a lot smoother, fixing up the Mary Sue attributes and making her very angsty. You will see what that means. Basically, she's a Marvel OC, part of the MCU, and her story begins way before the main movies even start. Alright, let's go through this very, very long process of the backstory, as well as explaining her species, because I made up a whole species for her OC. So, to begin, she is a species that I made up called Shridians, and from a planet named Shridia. So these aliens are half reptilian, half humanoid creatures. I'll explain what that means. But basically, these creatures, right, they're very powerful war-centered creatures, so they're very good at fighting. They're optimized for battle and becoming warriors. As they are half reptilian and half humanoid, they also have other not human capabilities, such as swiftness, agility, strength, etc., etc. Their half reptilian, half humanoid presence is based on different sort of percentages of said reptilian species. So you could be, for example, 50% humanoid or 50%, as well as 50% lizard or something like that. So maybe it differs with each creature, but you could, have the tail or the face or the arms or legs or something along those lines of the lizard feature, so 50%, while the other half is humanoid. The ratios and percentages differ and how you look like, so someone who's 50% lizard and another person who's 50% lizard could look completely different, so it entirely depends. And the reptilian half can depend on various species, so this could be fictional or mythical or canonical to them. Creatures, like alien type creatures that are reptilian based or one from Earth, so snake, chameleon, etc., etc. Now, these creatures also have two sets of powers. They have their reptilian side powers. So, for example, if you were part snake, you could have the venom attribute. If you had fangs as part of your percentage, if you were part chameleon, you could have that camouflaging thing. Maybe your skin could change colors to your liking, etc., etc. You could be very strong, like incredibly strong, if your reptilian side was, say, like an alligator or something like that. So that the species part of the power is attributed to what species you are, of course, and what percentage that is, and how much percentage of your reptilian side is how much of said power you would get, or etc. And the second set of powers is a very mild extra power, like what you would commonly think as your powers would be. For example, telekinesis, but it wouldn't be like the entire power. It would be simply just like levitation of certain sized objects. Like you could literally just be able to summon your sword towards you. That could just be the extent of your powers. They're very small, but it still exists, so they are still dubbed very powerful creatures by the universe. Now, these creatures lived thousands and thousands of years ago. Ages ago, Shridia is one of the 9 realms, except I'm making it so it's 10 realms and it became 9. You'll see why. basically, despite them being war creatures and optimal for fighting, they were very peaceful creatures. They didn't want to engage in war. Now, the entire universe and the rest of the realms were like, no, we don't want to do that actually, and were basically terrified that would, if they were to wage war, then the entire realms would be, weakened. They won't be able to stand up to them. So basically they saw them as a very big threat, despite them not exercising any sort of dangers, like not actually threatening anyone. They were just like kind of vibing in their planet. And so the rest of the realms were like, yo, you know what, let's wage war, and like a surprise attack, like if we do it first, then like we have an advantage. Kind of dumb. So all these realms decided to fight them. So there's this big war millions of years ago, and in the end they managed to defeat the entire Qurnljin species using something that is part of Corrin's story later on, but it's basically was a potion magic science thing that some scientists made that basically tortured the species into submission to immobilization, so they couldn't use either of their powers or anything basically, and used this to stop most of the armies that were trying to defend their home, and causing, I guess, the rest of the kingdoms to like stop because they didn't want their, I guess, people to be hurt. So they were like, yo, okay, fine, we allow you to take over our planet, I don't know, take over our people, I don't know. And so the 9 realms decided the best thing they could do was to take away the knowledge of these species. So what happened to Qurnljin basically was, in each planet of the 9 realms, they implemented a sort of machine that encaptures science magic to basically generate or power a big force field type thing around the planet of Qurnljin, including using magic into it and using spells to basically erase all memory and all knowledge except basic knowledge of these species. So basically they had no idea who they were or who they are, or like of the outside world or of extraterrestrials or space travel, etc., etc. They were basically down to cavemen type days, at the time that Corrin is alive, which is like millions of years later. Their species are probably in the medieval stages of life in comparison to Earth timeline. So that's basically what they did, and in this force field thing as well, they made it so all of their powers were subsided. So they had no idea they had the extra power. Their reptilian power was still in play though, of course, because that's more biological than magical. And so they had no idea they had these powers, but naturally they became warrior trained creatures. They had a sort of monarchy system, which I'll explain. And basically this is what Qurnljin became, and millions of years later, when the time of the MCU occurs, none of the 9 realms really remember that this species even existed, unless you learned history, etc., etc. The kings obviously do know about this species, obviously, because they have to keep the power thing generated in their planet to keep their shield up. Now, in terms of this monarchy system that I mentioned, another attribute these species had was every so 1,000 of years, a child would be born with like a stone or something in their chest, and this stone in their chest would symbolize that they're the next heir of the kingdom. Now, no one actually knows why this stone is there, like just is there for random children, but they have like a myth, or like they have their own legend or silly little story to explain it. But basically, just a child is born with this stone in them, and basically that means that they're the next heir and they'll be trained, etc. Now, this stone also enhances whatever extra power they have. So if you were, say, with telekinesis, and the only thing you could do was, move around this sword, if you had the stone, it would enhance it. So you would now have, you'll now be able to do your classic telekinesis-ness, and what we expect to see in movies and things. They'll be able to move a lot more things. They'll be able to, read people's minds. Beats me. So basically, their powers are extended if they have this thing, because if they're going to be the leader of the country, they have to be a bit more powerful. You know what I mean? So that's essentially why they become the heir. They become the next leader. Now, in terms of Corrin, she, during this time when she is alive, as I said, medieval times, they had armor, swords, weapons, etc., but very limited, like, science knowledge or technological knowledge. Now, Corrin, she, well, plot spoiler, she has the stone in her, but in this current time she doesn't, and I'll explain why she doesn't. But she doesn't have the stone in her right now. She is basically basically her parents at this point are outcasts or whatever. I think her father is exiled for something exiled from the main kingdom section of the planet, and her mother isn't exactly a highly regarded person of society, simply. And the actual heir, or the heir that is currently thought to be heir, is this character named Scorch. Their name properly is Scorch Adrots, and they're basically her former enemy, basically just rival in terms of childhoodness or whatever. And they're basically originally used to be a he, but then I made it into a she, and now I just can't be bothered. I haven't properly developed them properly, so this is what we've got so far. Now Scorch is 60% lizard and 40% human, and basically was a bully to her, very just like, oh, I'm better than you, I'm the heir, and you are not, and you kind of suck. So at this point, Corrin is about same age as Loki and Thor. Because their Sidran lifespan is quite big as well. And so at this current moment, it is 2012, and what happens in 2012? The Dark World, Thor, the second film, and in there occurs the Convergence. Now, in the Convergence, it causes the generator powers on the magic and science that covers the force field around Sudya to be a little dodgy, as expected, as explained in the Dark World, how Jane was able to go through that wormhole to find the reality stone. Basically, the borders of the realms are all a bit blurry, etc., and this also causes instability between Sudya and its portals. So naturally, everyone kind of hopes that no one escapes the planet, or at least does anything. And now, of course, some species, some creatures in Sudya might accidentally use their extra power because of the shift. So they might accidentally, push over a cup, and they'll be like, that's kind of weird, but then pass it off, obviously, because it just never happens again for another 5,000 years. And you don't really want to be going around running, yo guys, I pushed over a thing and it never happens again, but like it happened that one time, because you seem crazy. So they just kind of vibe and just hope nothing bad happens, except ho ho ho, something bad does happen. Basically, during this week of the Convergence, a bunch of items are falling into Sudya, and since Corrin is an outcast, hashtag not like other girls, she's just exploring the wilderness, and she finds these items, because no one really explores the wilderness. And so she brings these items home. She's like, bro, what's this? Like, what the frick is this screwdriver looking thing? Obviously doesn't know what a screwdriver is, but we know it's a screwdriver. I don't know. And she finds some magazines, and she finds one that has the 2000 and whatever it is article on the Avengers and Loki's attack on New York. That was 2012, wasn't it? I can't remember. And she's like, yo, this is kind of weird, and looks at Tony Stark, and he's like, that's kind of weird. And then one fateful day, she's walking about when she finds Iron Man's gauntlet that Tony was working on, and it kind of fell through a hole, and he's like, that's kind of weird. But then she finds it, and she's like, this is kind of weird. She's like, I have no idea what this thing is. It kind of looks like like an actual armor gauntlet that they have in their planet. But she's like, kind of weird. Then, whoa, she turns around, and then there's Scorch and Scorch's buddies, and they're like, ha ha ha, let's bully you. And she's like, and doesn't really know how to defend herself. But then this is where I explain Corrin's powers. So Corrin's powers is the electromagnetism manipulation. Now, for you guys out there who don't know electromagnetism, it's basically like everything electrical, but then again electrical down to the subatomic levels. So, like the four forces that control the world, etc., etc. Like gravity, strong force, weak force, etc., etc. Basically, what Magneto does, but also everything to a subatomic level. It's very powerful, and as I said, plot spoiler, she has the stone in her technically, so it's a lot more powerful than what she should be. And so I will read this off fandom.com's power listing, because that's just simpler to list our powers. Basically, the user can create, shape, and manipulate electromagnetism for almost all physical phenomena observable to the unaided human senses, including light and other electromagnetic radiation, all of chemistry and most of mechanics, and of course magnetism and electricity. Now, some of these things include, with the different applications on basic level, is attraction and repulsion, so you can attract and repel metallic and magnetized objects, deflection of these objects, demagnetization, making non-metal objects magnetic, and sensing magnetic fields. More advanced level is controlling the energy of charged particles, as well as electric fields, electric charges, levitate and fly by using a strong electromagnetic energy, absorbing the energy, converting it into other forms of energy, using it in attacks, concentrating the energy towards any body or object, constructing things, detecting electromagnetic phenomenon, creating their own fields, allowing them to see it, manipulating it, obviously manipulating magnetism and its properties, controlling people who have a field, and also technology manipulation. On an expert level, you can control the electromagnetism emitted from living organisms, can control bioelectricity and magnetism. It can shape, control, and manipulate matter, basically, including telekinesis. You can also sense electrical thoughts and signals, so telepathy, can control noise and radiation. It can also block input and scramble neural impulses, so having a psychic shield and manipulating people's thoughts, as our brains are made of neurons, thus electricity. A master level will be to be immune to and control the electromagnetic spectrum, controlling microwaves, etc., affecting the gravitational influence, controlling neural impulses, so that could also include like controlling people's movements, by sending brain signals, etc., and being immune to psychic interference. Ultimate level will be quantum energy manipulation, so basic units of matter and energy, control subatomic particles, manipulate subatomic particles, chemistry, molecular and atomic manipulation, and wormhole creation, so she can teleport basically, and she can also at this point, which is ultimate level, is change the subatomic properties of things, so she could technically, hypothetically, turn metal into wood or something like that by changing the atoms. That's not how that works, but you know what I mean. You can change the thing, change your carbon structures, etc., etc. And now absolute level would be controlling electromagnetism to influence reality, control nuclear fission and fusion, manipulating strong force and weak force, so again subatomic, and controlling scalar waves, which you guys probably don't know what that is. And now a lot of these things can be used in combat as well as everything else. Now you probably are thinking, yeah, this is kind of Mary Sue, this is kind of what the frick, that's very powerful. Yeah, it is, but again, the powers are blocked by the force at this point, but basically at a basic level she can control electricity. So we're at this point where Scorch and their buddies are confronting Corrin, who has just found this gauntlet, and she's like, how am I supposed to defend myself? Now Scorch attacks, and out of an instinct she kind of just like puts her arm up to block, and that's when she finds the gauntlet on her arm. Basically she's summoned it to her arm like Tony does with his little like wrist thing, except since she can control electricity, she can control this gauntlet and basically blast Scorch off. Now Scorch isn't hurt because they can, they're strong, I guess, and have lizard skin, and Corrin's like, kind of weird, and so she is like, what the frick, but then kind of stumbles back and kind of falls out of Stridia. So the convergence did its thing, and she just kind of fell out, and kind of appears at a different planet. She's like, kind of weird. And now this is where things get weird, because she's just like, whoa, became, kind of loser to one of the most powerful creatures on the planet. She finds that she has the stone in her chest, and she's like freaking out. She's like, bro, what the frick? Why do I have the thing that, that makes me, leader of my entire species on my chest? I thought it was the other guys. And she's like, what? And she can, like, her powers are kind of gone a bit woozy. She's like tripping over. She's like moving things back, and she's like, bro, what the frick? A few hours later, she's intercepted by Asgardians, and then she finds out what actually happened. So basically, Frigga and Odin were having a little chat a few centuries ago, and we're like, it's about time, one day, Strigia's thing's gonna fail, the force field will fail, and, they're gonna find out what happened, they're gonna be very angry, and, last time we kind of made this all happen, but this time they're gonna make it happen, because they're gonna be mad at us, right? So Frigga and Odin made this little plan, where they were like, we're gonna get the heir, the most powerful, and basically hide that they're the heir, right? So Frigga uses her magic and illusions to add more magic into the system, and basically hid the stone from Corrin, and made a fake one on Scorch, and was like, so now after a while, when the convergence happens, and we can legally justifiably explain how she escaped by accident, and just be like, yo, intercept her, and kind of just tell her what happened, explain to her what happened, to try and sway her her fellow species into not raging a war with the rest of the galaxy. Now Corrin learns about the entire history, and she's like, kind of interesting. Also forgot to mention her species power and who Corrin is. This is all over the place. She is 80% humanoid and 20% dragon for her reptile. So she basically has horns and reptilian wings, like dragon wings, and just spots of scales all over her skin, but mostly just humanoid. And her reptilian power is just fire immunity or whatever because of the scales. Basically her wings are fire immune, so she can use them to block fire stuff. I don't know. Dragons are fire immune. Anyways, I love the way. So she kind of learns this whole shabam. She's like, yo, kind of cool. She kind of briefly meets Loki in prison because, Dark World kind of hasn't happened yet, and so she's like, kind of weird. She just kind of vibes in Asgard for quite a bit, just kind of being trained by Sif and that, like, how to fight, how to sort of control her powers, and she still doesn't know the extent of her powers. She's like, okay. Now, of course, as I was saying, the extreme levels of the listings that Fandom.com put up, she can only really access maybe basic and advanced level at this point without any restrictions. I'll explain what that means, but she could probably only access basic and advanced level stuff, and for expert level, master level, and ultimate level, and absolute level, should probably be needing an extra, like, force output, like to absorb the energy so she can use that energy without passing out, basically, by using all of her life energy, etc. So yeah, she's kind of controlling all this stuff, but also she's really mad. She could, like, really angry, powerful, cool scene where they kind of lose, all of their moral sensibility. That kind of scenes, she could probably access the higher levels as well with that. But she's kind of just training, vibing, and then she gets notice that, well, yeah, one of the planet's generators kind of broke or kind of failed, and now she's just kind of going crazy. Anyways, so they're like, you know what, Corrin, you're going to need to go back. This is after Dark World, by the way, and they're just going to, you need to go back, you need to go fight, well, not fight, but like help hold your species' horses. And so she goes, and she's kind of like, this is kind of weird. A bunch of the realms are finding that, like, don't leave the planet, because Strigian can't leave the planet now because they don't actually have ships, they have nothing, they're just fighting. And Corrin goes there, and she's like, yo, guys, stop. But then, oopsie daisies, she's kind of fighting, she bumps into Scorch and fights them for a bit, but then Scorch ends up dying, because Scorch, kind of mad that they're not the heir, obviously, because the stone disappears, so they swear to find Corrin to kill her. And Corrin's reptilian power is to regrow their limbs, because they're part lizard, which she finds out when her hand's cut off at some point during the fighting. And her extended power is limited pyrokinesis, fire stuff, and they lead an army in the war, and she ends up dying when Corrin kills her accidentally, sort of, and Corrin's kind of confused and in pain and in anger at this point. She's like, bro, and accidentally kills Scorch. Anyways, now this is where the big whoopsie happens. So Corrin kind of destroys Strigia. Let me explain. So Corrin is kind of fighting. She's kind of overwhelmed because, like, first time she's kind of seen all of this war kind of happen, and she's like, bro, and she's trying to use her powers as well as fighting. Nothing's going as planned. And with the overwhelming destruction of killing Scorch, she's like, bro. And this is where the ultimate master expert level of her electromagnetism manipulation comes in, and she just kind of accidentally causes irregular disruption in the planet's core, or at least in the planet's like Earth, like where she's standing, and everything's cracking, and there's a bunch of toxins coming out, and she's like, bro, kind of weird, what the frick? And she's like, can't control it, and she's like obviously in pain because like she's using all of her forces and like body's energy to like be able to generate such power to, you know, be able to change the molecular structure of everything. And basically the planet's dying, and now everyone's dying because the planet's dying. She's like, what the frick? And she can't control power, and that's when she realizes that she's actually very, very powerful, because she already has like a very powerful, like limited power, but with the stone she's even more powerful because stone is power in it, like, you know, making it enhanced. And she's like, frick. And she can't control it obviously because it's very big and she hasn't actually done this before. And then lo and behold, a ship comes down, and out comes this lovely lad named Qurnljin Veiqnais. Now, Qurnljin Veiqnais is an alien equivalent of a scientist, and he's a humanoid alien from an unknown planet who specializes in enhanced technology. When he realized that Studio was being attacked and it's like been exposed, he quickly goes to some old projects to see if he can find a way to find the old technologies used to initially defeat the Strigians millennia ago, and, you know, try and use it this time. So he fixes it, but then he like adds some extra elements, he spices it up, he goes, I can use this to my advantage. And so he goes down, and then when he arrives in the midst of destruction, he realizes that the planet is unstable and it's a highly toxic, and he detects a source, right? Because there's a big source that's surging through the thing, and it's Corrin, and she's basically frozen in pain and horror, and the power is overwhelming her, and she's destroying the planet. So he goes down and manages to persuade her in the, mind you, very painful moment she can't think properly, to take this technology that he's got to restrict their power, so she can basically stop destroying the planet. And the technology is like in a liquid form. It's like a spell. Basically, it's like magic technology. You know how it is. And she does, you know, because she's panicking, and the pain subsides, and her power kind of like fluctuates out. It's too late for the planet though. It's kind of dying, and there's a bunch of earthquakes, people dying, and everything. So Niall takes Corrin off the planet just in time to see Sidra basically break into like 5 big pieces. You know how those cool art looks like scenes where the planet just kind of breaks. And it's estimated the whole Strigian race is basically extinct at this point, and so Corrin comes back to her senses, and Niall tells her what the potion she took actually was. And now this is called the curse. We've just dubbed it the curse because it's just easier, you know, capital T, capital C, dark curse. Basically, the technology that she took was basically made it so Niall is her overseer. Basically, she has no control or autonomy, nothing at all over herself. She cannot do anything. She cannot speak. She can think, but she cannot like act, do anything, use her powers at all unless Niall approves it, basically, or orders her to do it. And basically, she's completely under his control. Now, Qurnljin Veiqnais is kind of a unique master in terms of her other ones, because he's a science, so he doesn't engage in war or anything, but he was very strict, so he mainly used Corrin's powers to make destructive weapons to sell to, you know, people and companies, governments, etc., and also to bypass dangerous obstacles to gain rare materials for his inventions, you know. And he lived in a secluded place on a hidden planet so no one could come and steal his things, but mostly to protect his most prized invention, Corrin's control. So he restricted her freedom to nearly nothing, you know, so nothing compared to what her other overseers do, but she was still allowed to live some sort of life apart from her prison life. But then her second overseer comes, this lad named Untitled Veiqnais. Now, Untitled Veiqnais is an alien who led war and conflict in the galaxy with large armies, etc. Kinda like Ronan in Guardians of the Galaxy. He heard of a scientist, Qurnljin Veiqnais, and was like, and learned that he trapped a powerful being and was able to control her. So he was like, you know, I could use this. So he tracks them down and basically uses one of Niall's own other inventions to block Corrin from interrupting him from murdering him. Basically, the only way to transfer the power of one overseer to another was through death. So basically, if you kill the current overseer, then you're now the overseer. And so word of Corrin's existence spread, obviously, so he came, and neither Cor-ran nor Nal detected his invasion, and so Corrin just wakes up, immediately heading to Nal's private quarters, because her primary motive, like one of the main coding in the curse, was to protect the Overseer. Like that's the main thing. So obviously she can sense if he's in danger, so he does that immediately. But once she gets there, Qurnljin uses a powerful shield tool that Nal invented to block the entrance, and interferes with teleportation. She can't get in. So she uses all of her still limited power to get in, but she can't. And but she's using all of her power tools, so she's power drained and weakens her, so she can't stop Qurnljin from stabbing Nal in front of her. And the transfer of the power from one master to another is very powerful and disables Corrin, and for a bit. And so Qurnljin is pleased and basically orders immediately for her to go to him into his ship to leave. Now the curse, apart from also meaning that Corrin can control literally everything, is that it also limits her powers. So basically it means the Overseer can't access the higher levels, and if they do, they will need to have an external power source. But basically it does limit her power, so technically the curse is very beneficial, because it means she won't lose control again, etc., and she actually is able to control it all. So later in the time, she does choose to have an Overseer instead of being completely free, because of her trauma from destroying her home planet, and also just because she knows that she won't be able to control these really high powers. Now Xiandil, he basically, unlike Nal, was power bound, fueled by war, and he used her as his right hand fighter, that continued to help him lead all the wars and battles, and causing destruction and death in seconds. He didn't care about Corrin's well-being, and she's often burnt out after each battle. And he becomes more and more popular and feared, because Corrin does all the dirty work and just very dangerous. And Corrin, underneath his control, learned how to be heartless and fearless and kill without hesitation, basically, because she could basically kill seconds after Qurnljin gives her the nod of approval, and also in ruthless ways. She could stop the neural pulses that go to someone's heart and just kind of kill them in seconds. And also very cool, but not kind of cool, but hypothetically, she could do what what's her name, Dark Phoenix 2019 movie, Jean Grey, when she's in the train and kind of makes everyone dissolve into dust. She could technically do that, because that means just breaking the bond between all the atoms and turning it into dust. Yeah, never mind. This heartlessness prepared her, unfortunately, for Thanos' eventual control. So plot twist, yes, Thanos does become her next Overseer. So Thanos quickly hears about Qurnljin and Corran, obviously, as Qurnljin has his fast rise to powerful leader, and Thanos heard about them, how they infiltrated planets and killed millions of people and populations and cities in minutes. So Thanos at this point is still looking for a way to destroy half the universe's population without the Infinity Stones, and so he's like, interesting. So he found Corran very fast, and knew it would be hard to kill Qurnljin, because Corran would try to defend him, and so he decided to do a plan with the warlord, to make a deal, but planning to betray him, kind of like Ronan. So he made a meeting to set a truce. And Qurnljin was also very, into this plan, because it was Thanos, he was big and powerful, it was a good alliance, so he brought defenses and Corran, and, neither knew Thanos was going to kill him. And so it was very quick, as Qurnljin was quickly killed, as Gamora and Nebula teamed up behind him. Basically, Thanos was like, I'm going to kill this lad, and Corran's about to defend, but then behind him, Gamora and Nebula kill him instead, so Corran couldn't react as fast, and as she did, she basically was disabled as the transference of power began, and Thanos became her third master. Now, Thanos is not quite fun. Thanos basically did what that Gamora flashback scene was, just basically take her to all the planets, basically go and just kill half the population and leave. Basically that's what they did manually. It's a bit quicker than what he was doing, but not as fast as with the Infinity Stones. And so, you know, that was just Corrin's life for a good many years until Infinity War or whatever. And so because of this, she does interact with Gamora and Nebula and kind of become friends, but also not kinda, because Gamora and Nebula obviously are fighting for best daughter prize, you know. And so, like, obviously having someone who's better and, you know, cooler than them isn't, you know, exactly on their you know, wants to have list. So they just kind of don't like Corrin, but they just kind of, you know, can't really do anything about it because, you know, Thanos loves her, because she can kill people for him. And so, you know, she's kind of there when Gamora and that kind of leave to do the whole Guardians of the Galaxy shenanigans in 2014, but she doesn't really do anything about it because obviously she's with Thanos the entire time. And obviously Thanos' kind of demeanor with being her overseer is just like, don't talk, don't speak, don't do literally anything unless I tell you to. So she's used to that kind of lifestyle, to not do anything at all unless she's told to, like not even speak, not even to warn, no ponders, nothing, no inquiries, anything at all. This also means she can't express emotion unless she's told to, you know, she can't cry, etc. Anyways, not a great time. Now, we'll go all the way up to the point where he's looking for the Infinity Stone. She just kind of helps him get Infinity Stones, but nothing else after he realizes he can just use the Infinity Stones to kill everybody. So, you know, she's kind of vibing, she's still his most powerful weapon, and then there's Infinity War, where, you know, great fun. She's not really active until the battle on Titan, where she kind of goes there with Thanos to Titan, but she's ordered by Thanos not to do anything because Thanos wants to be, you know, a loser and show off to the Avengers that he can fight. So she's kind of vibing in the background, just watching this fight happen until the moment where they're all kind of around Thanos and they're taking off the gauntlet, like Spider-Man's about to take it off, and then as Spider-Man's about to take it off, Corrin's like, yo, this is kind of dangerous. This technically counts as, you know, protecting Thanos, so therefore she can technically defy his orders to, you know, not interfere. And so she kind of interferes and stops them from taking off the gauntlet. So instead of Peter Quill going crazy, and so that kind of happens. And now she kind of is in the battle a bit, but she's just kind of stopping them from attacking Thanos, so Thanos can kind of help, you know, fight for himself at this point. You know, he's not captured. And then we get to the scene where Doctor Strange is about to give the Time Stone to Thanos in return for Tony's life, and Corrin is kind of like, what? Because at this point Thanos is fighting Tony, obviously, and Tony, the first time that Tony's mask helmet comes off, obviously because he's run out of nanoparticles, and this is when Corrin kind of realizes who he is and recognizes him from the one magazine she saw all the way back on Stridia when she found, you know, the magazine from the Convergence. She's like, hold on a second, guys. And she's just kind of freaking out inside, and Thanos orders her to retrieve the Time Stone from Doctor Strange. And she's like, no. And this is the first time that she's able to defy an order from the curse. And she just kind of stands there and doesn't. And then, obviously, because the curse doesn't like her, she's basically just glitching. She's basically, you know, overpowering, and she's like terrified she's going to break the planet again, so she kind of just teleports out of there. And in this mess of defying the orders, the singular order, she's just teleporting all over the galaxy and just randomly on like asteroids, on random ships, and etc. And she's just teleporting because she's just like, what the frick's going on? And she's like, basically glitching is what is happening. And then she just kind of teleports to Earth and passes out. Now, this is where her fourth overseer comes into play. Pretty sure it's the fourth overseer, and she basically wakes up and spoiler, her fourth overseer is Clint Barton. Basically, Clint is just wandering about his farm like, bro, where the frick is my family? And he's just kind of wandering, and then he just kind of sees this person kind of appear midair and just kind of falls ground. And he's like, huh? And realizes it's Corrin. He doesn't know who she is, but she's just there. Kind of takes her inside and is like, bro, what the frick is going on? My family just disappeared, and like the news is, you know, going crazy. There's a bunch of reports of people going missing, and you know, this lady is falling into my backyard. And you know, she kind of wakes up, and because the curse is a bit of a glitch, it just kind of decides, yo, the first person you see is going to be your overseer, and so that's Clint. And so Clint becomes her overseer, and basically Clint is her overseer for 5 years as he becomes Ronin. And maybe it would have been cool if she had a life of normality and not killing people, but since he became more Ronin, she just came back to killing people. But at least, Clint is kind of better than all of her other ones. And there's like, whole, sort of the part where the story becomes slightly comedy as, sitcom-like, as she realizes that, she has a life and a body and autonomy and, has to slowly learn how to get out of her old habits of, not speaking at all, not doing literally anything except standing there in silence as your overseer does whatever your overseer is doing, like Thanos and Realnet taught her to. Because Clint's always like, yo, you feel like you can't speak, right? You don't have to just be in pure silence the entire time. And so, that's a whole sequence. 5 years of, yo, who's your family? Yo, you have feelings. Yo, I can have feelings. Bro, I didn't know I could have feelings. It's cool, not gonna lie. So, it's a great time for everyone, not really. So that just kind of happens for 5 years. Now, when Endgame happens, Natasha comes, and it's just this mini scene where she comes down, and Corrin's like, bro, what the frick? And it's about to attack Natasha, but Clint's like, yo, no, she's my friend. And she's like, oh, okay. And Natasha takes him back to the compound, as usual, and Natasha's like, bro, what the frick is this alien you got here, Clint? But okay, I won't question it. When they arrive at the facility, that's when like Nebula and Tony kind of go feral because they're like, bro, this is the lady that tried to kill us, bro. And Nebula obviously knows Corran a lot more because of, Thanos, so she's like, bro, and tries to attack her, but then Clint's like, yo, no, actually, she's a good guy now, she's with me. And so then they're like, bro, okay, and they all kind of explain Shooter's history briefly, and they're just kind of like, okay, kind of cool. Now, while they're thinking up of the time travel stuff, Corrin slightly helped because she can technically quantum manipulate, even though she can't because she doesn't have enough power. So they do kind of give her some power, like just from energy generators, to see what she can do. She can do something, so she does help with time travel discovery sequence. So when they're going back in time, she doesn't actually go back in time, but she kind of stays at the machine with the Hulk, the Professor Hulk, to just kind of look after the whole thing, make sure nothing bad happens. And so when they all come back and they're all inspecting the gauntlet, when Hulk and Thor are arguing about who to do the snap thing, she's just kind of still at the time travel place because she's just kind of, I'll fix it up, just clean it up, make sure nothing is out of order. And that's when Nebula comes down, or fake Nebula, and fake Nebula is like, bro, and then she's like, bro, what are you doing here, Nebula? Fake Nebula's like, nothing, and so fake Nebula just kind of tries to subtly turn on the machine, but then Corrin catches her and she's like, bro, what the frick are you doing? And then she realizes, and she's just like, and they start fighting, although Corrin isn't actually fighting because like she can't actually fight anything or anyone unless she has Clint's clear mission, but since she's just kind of protecting herself, she's just kind of half fighting, she's kind of just blocking, like, bro, what the frick are you doing? Like, don't kill me, but she's not actually kind of attacking. But then while they're doing that, Nebula does actually manage to activate the time machine portal thing, and it's not very good, and so the ship kind of comes and destroys the place, and Nebula and Corrin kind of get blasted back. Nebula's just like gone AWOL, no one knows where she is at this point, and Corrin's just like, bro, and in the room where the Avengers are, they're kind of like, bro, what's that kind of rocking around the place? And they kind of look outside and like, what the, and Corrin's like, and so she tries to use telekinesis to try and stop the ship from shooting. She's kind of holding the blast, not really taking telekinesis, but also like every one of our other powers, just to hold this energy blast that's coming towards the facility. But obviously she can't do it properly, so then it just kind of, and then the entire facility goes boom, and she just kind of passes out, or sort of, not really, but just gets hidden under debris. And the whole scene, like in the movie, plays out. They're just all kind of escaping, and she goes up, and great fun. She finds Clint and the gauntlet, and just helps with the gauntlet hot potato scenario parcel. And Thanos is like, ho ho ho, another Corran, because this is 2014 Corran, right? 2014 Thanos that has come back, which means there is also a 2014 Corran, right? Because Corran is there, and so there's a pre-Corran, like another Corran. I'll call her pre-Corran. And so Thanos sends this pre-Corran to fight Corran. So pre-Corran during this fight manages to cut Corrin's left wing, just like the wing part of the wing, just like the flappy part. I don't know what they're called. Anyway, they're fighting, and then Corrin managed to kill pre-Corrin, you know, like Nebula and pre-Nebula scenes, kind of like that, but a lot more intense because they're like actually fighting and stuff. And obviously Corrin has more freedom than pre-Corrin, so that's how she kind of manages to kill pre-Corrin. Now, at this point, Corrin sees that Captain Marvel getting thrown off by Thanos, and she goes and fight Thanos, right? Because she's like, no one can really fight Thanos except me, or, you know, Captain Marvel, or like one of the bigger guys, you know, i.e. not Tony, a mere human who's gonna... Anyways, then she kind of goes and fights Thanos. But because of the curse, and because now there's a Thanos, and Thanos used to be an overseer, and, you know, there was another Corrin, there's a glitch. You know, the curse is kind of, bro, what the frick? There's two overseers at one time. What the frick is going on? So there's another glitch. So she's kind of... It's hard kind of to fight him because she can't harm her overseer, so she's kind of, there's scenes where she's like about to punch him but can't because, you know, she can't. And but then there's like this verbal fight between Clint and Thanos where they go, no, listen to me, no, listen to me, no, listen to me type, you know, ordeal. And in the end, she does kill Thanos, but in the process Thanos breaks her left wing, like the bone part. So RIP that wing. Anyways, she manages to use the Infinity Power Stone to give her power to basically overcome the glitch and just kill him basically. And the battle is still going on though, so she's like, you know, let's just do a little shortcut. So she gets the gauntlet and does the snap and basically turns everyone to dust, the bad guys, and her left arm is scorched like they are. And then, you know, while they're there, they're just kind of like, bro, we have power, all the power in the universe, right, in my hand. We could technically transfer my powers to someone else. I mean, the curse, because technically Clint at this point is like, yo, my family's back. I'm literally just going to be like a dad. I'm not going to, you know, I'm retiring from the Avengers, and I don't think he's going to want that. And so Colin's like, yeah, me neither. Actually, I would like, you know, to use my powers for good, because like this time, the first time she uses her powers for good, technically. And she's like, well, I want to, you know, get an overseer that actively is to protect the universe, and I want to, you know, be part of that. And so they're like, who's our best bet? So originally, well, not originally, but an option that I had for a new overseer was going to be the Guardians of the Galaxy, you know, maybe Peter or something like that. But then I decided more cooler would be Doctor Strange. So they do that. They use the stone, one of the stones, beats me which one, all of them, to transfer the curse to Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange is the overseer instead of Clint, without killing Clint, obviously. And so Doctor Strange is the overseer because he does protect the universe and the multiverse, etc., etc. It's all kind of cool. So she does that, and they live happily ever after. Not really. So post Endgame is kind of weird, obviously, because we haven't really got much content post Endgame that kind of matters. We have Far From Home, but she wouldn't really be part of Far From Home. I feel like maybe she could be called in by Nick Fury or fake Nick Fury, although fake Nick Fury wants Peter and not anyone. You know, technically, like if you look into it by knowing what we know, that it's fake Nick Fury, fake Nick Fury won't want anyone else, and the fact that none of the Avengers are available was probably a lie just to get Peter to, you know, do what Peter was going to do. So I really doubt that she would interfere with Far From Home. Now with the TV series, with WandaVision and the Falcon and Winter Soldier, she's most likely going to be part of that. So now with WandaVision, I'm kind of waiting for the multiverse movie to come out, mainly so I can see what that is and how to insert it into WandaVision, because obviously, as we can see from now on, that WandaVision will play an important role in what happens in, you know, the multiverse, madness of multiverse, as well as Loki, but Loki's a bit less, as I think what happens in the TVA doesn't really affect anyone. As I'll explain what the TVA is, because, like, in terms of Corrin, because Corrin does have a TVA version. But with the WandaVision, I'm going to wait a bit until I find out what her role is going to be in WandaVision. I'm thinking maybe Doctor Strange sends her to Westview to see what's going on, and she kind of gets sucked into Wanda's dilemma, but we're not sure yet. In terms of the Falcon and the Soldier, that one's kind of a bit easier and kind of cool. So for now, it's kind of like I'm thinking maybe, I haven't really confirmed it, but something along the lines of she's kind of bored at Doctor Strange's place because he's just kind of meditating, doing nothing, and she just kind of goes to the Avenger facility to vibe, and then realizes there's this whole Captain America deal going on, so she kind of goes and vibes with them. It's like, bro, what the frick, what's going on, and having fun. In terms of her wing, there's a redesign on her at this point, so after her wing kind of gets broken, they kind of just amputate it because they can't fix it really because it's kind of badly broken, and so they're like, you know what, let's give you a cool wing. So very much alive Tony Stark creates a nanotech very cool wing, metal one that she has. So she has one wing that's metal and one that's natural, I guess. Anyways, that's kind of how she looks like now. And post, there's a lot of things going on. We have, for Loki TV series, technically I want to make an alternate Corran to be in that, a bit like how there's an alternate Loki instead of normal Loki, that hopefully isn't dead Loki, but most likely is dead Loki. But anyways, so yeah, and Corrin at this point, her story is to be continued, undetermined, because we have to wait to see what happens. But there are other versions of Corrin. There are actually 3 current versions of Corrin. There's canon Corrin, which is this one. Then there's TVA Corrin, which is part of the Loki series, and then there is the X-Men Corrin, because I watched the X-Men universe and I was like, heck, kind of cool. I have emotional issues, so I can't make a new OC as of yet. So why don't we instead create a different version of Corrin to be part of the X-Men universe? So if we just take a little step back, you might be doing your own thing right now, but if you're still listening, congrats. But if you'd like to take a little peek to your screen, where you can see this lovely little thing I drew one day. It's really, really cool. It took me way longer than it should have, but I'm gonna ignore that little tidbit there. Basically, this is the very complex timeline of all the different types of Corrins that I've got. So basically, if you can see, it's a sexy little thing. This line right here is the canon Corran timeline. This is the MCU timeline with Corran in it. As you can see, here's where Infinity War happens, then Endgame, and afterwards the WandaVision, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, etc. Now, X-Men Corran, I won't really go into detail with it, but X-Men Corran's story is written. I managed to be able to write that down. So if you want, you can go read that. They'll all be linked. Everything I kind of mentioned in this video will be kind of linked in the description, so you can go check it out. But kind of X-Men Corran, kind of at one point after Endgame, which is vibing with Doctor Strange, she accidentally gets a lot of power. It's kind of sucked into her. She just kind of walks into a nuclear plant by accident and kind of accidentally, jumps dimensions instead of teleport. She tries to teleport, but instead accidentally just teleports to another dimension. It goes vroom into the revised X-Men timeline, James McAvoy, Professor X, to Apocalypse, just after Apocalypse. She just kind of vibes there, has fun, you can read about what happens, and then she just kind of finds a way to come back into this new timeline, where basically it's a mirror of this timeline, but just kind of different. Obviously, I'll explain, but the Falcon and the Winter Soldier is a big turning point to make it a different. So basically, this timeline is exactly the same as this timeline. It's just that in this timeline, Corran knows that there's a multiverse, basically, and in this one, there kind of isn't, unless, of course, multi-universe of madness does something, and so technically, multiverse exists. But basically, the reason there's a different timeline is because there's a different future, and this Corran's different. She goes back to a normal timeline, and there's another small episode where Professor X accidentally comes over to her timeline because of another thing that she accidentally does, and she takes him back. Then there's a part where down here, after the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, during the whole SHIELD debacle, a wannabe Captain America that the government assigns, like a new Captain America, accidentally kills Doctor Strange somehow. I've written it all down if you want to read it, but so then he becomes Corran's overseer, and this dude's got the serum. He's kind of weird, just kind of corrupted. He's kind of going crazy. So he's like, "Yo, kill all the Avengers." And she's like, but she can't really do anything about it, even though she tries, and she just kind of kills all the Avengers. All the Avengers are like, and so they're all dead. And it's like angsty, it's dramatic. She can't do anything about it. So this is where the dystopian MCU universe occurs. Basically, it's just dystopian because everyone's just kind of overthrowing the government. Like Carly Morgenthal's the whole rebellion kind of keeps going because of this new Captain America. John Walker's bro kind of helps him, but then and is friends with Corran because Corran is under this new Captain America's command. Anyways, and then that kind of happened. And after she kills all the Avengers, she's like, but then at this point, Professor X, who is her overseer in the X-Men timeline, kind of dies, or is dying, and she kind of feels it, so she goes over to the other side and brings him back, like brings his consciousness back, and does kind of a Fugitoid from the Ninja Turtles thing, where it's just kind of Professor X's brain inside of a robot, because in the X-Men timeline he's dead, in this AU thing, but he's kind of alive in the MCU universe, and because of that, since he's her overseer, there's a small glitch, so she's able to kill new Captain America, and just is freed from his, I guess, evilness, and it's just vibing with Professor X. You can read more about that if you want. So that's second Corran, X-Men Corran. There's a lot more to it if you want to read it. We appreciate it. It'd be very cool. I spent a lot of time on it. You know, a stupid amount of time. Now, third Corran, which I made recently, is the TVA Loki timeline. Basically, you know, we have canon MCU timeline, right? And then we have the second timeline that the Endgame alternate MCU timeline. So this is the timeline that the Avengers jumped to get the Infinity Stones. And so at around 2012 Avengers, when Loki comes off, you can see he comes onto the TVA timeline, because the TVA timeline is different, obviously, from canon timeline. And so you can see here, just after Infinity War, while she's with Clint, she accidentally does an oopsie, you know, slips up, causes something, and so the TVA kind of come in, the Minutemen are like, bro, and take her away, and she's like, huh, and so, you know, replacement Corran, you know, canon Corran just keeps going, you know, as the reversal time bomb thing goes off. I forgot what they're called, sorry. And this mistake Corran comes into the TVA timeline and then involves in TVA Loki shenanigans. Yet to be determined, obviously, because the series hasn't finished yet, but obviously I'll put up an update at some point. I'll probably write it all down as well on my TOYHOUSE, so you might want to follow that if you want to get updates on Corran in TVA, etc. So those are just the three different, they're all alternate versions, not like, so TVA Corran and X-Men Corran aren't canon, they're just kind of like what ifs, you know, but this is the canon Corran timeline to see what happens along the movies. So, whew, I think that's it, guys. That's unedited 58 minutes of just me talking. My throat is so dead, but I think that is all that I'm going to speak about with Corran. That was a lot, but basically I think that is it. As you can see, this is so much easier to speak it than to write it down, because writing it down would have been bad and just a mess. It would have been a mess, no one would want to read it, it's been so long, but now you can just watch it on 2x speed and get it through by listening to my lovely voice. Anyways, this is the first unofficial episode of the main character complex, officially the second episode. It'll be great, okay? It'll be great. It will be great. I don't know. If you want to follow for more sexy OC content or main character complex podcast content, general shenanigans that I have with my friends, just stupid things that we do, that we make, that we just, it's a sweet, sweet time. Just come and vibe. It'll be great fun. Just trust me, okay? Just follow. It'll be great. It's brilliant. Have fun. Thanks. Subscribe to my Instagram, where I have my art, my TOYHOUSE, where I have my OCs. If you want to read my stupid fan fiction, there's a WATTPAD and Archer of our own linked below. Subscribe to this channel. Subscribe to my second channel, where even worse stuff happens. Just, you know, vibe. Thank you for listening to me talk about Corran, and get you next time.